Is UFC play-by-play man Jon Anik considering leaving the UFC and retiring from MMA commentary? That's what we're going to discuss in today's video. My name is James Lynch. So there's this clip that circulated on Twitter last night, this morning. I'm going to play it for you right now, and I'll let you guys kind of decide what you think Anik is saying here. A lot of frustration with the fan base, but also hinting at a possible retirement from UFC commentary, MMA commentary, but with the UFC. You know what I'm saying. Let's hear from Anik right here as part of the Anik and Florian podcast.
Because even if you and I both thought Dricus du Plessis won the fight, we try to present that information respectfully. And when I go on to X or I go to our YouTube comments, it seems like a lot of these fans are just in attack mode. And I don't know if these fans...
I just got to quickly mention this. I agree with him, by the way. I've been very surprised by the backlash of this du Plessis and Strickland fight. A lot of fans are being, let's just be honest, a little bit weird. I've heard, I did a whole video on this, the conspiracy theories of, Sean Strickland didn't get the nod because of his political views, like that type of stuff. So I'm sure this is sort of, adding on to it. So I understand Anik's frustration here. Just wanted to throw that in there because it has been a really weird week for people calling robbery on that fight on Saturday night. But let's hear from Anik the rest of the way, and I will not interrupt him anymore.
Are casual fans or not, right? But I appreciate the passion, but I'm getting to a point at 45 years of age where I don't know how much time I have left in this MMA space, because if I go do pro football, like, I'm not necessarily going to be dealing with this lowest common denominator all the time. And I don't know, man, I just feel like there's a lot of malice and disrespect from the fan base, and we can disagree. Like, don't take it from me. Demetrius Johnson and Kenny Florian thought DDP won the fight. I don't know. I've just been very off put with the negativity that has permeated my feed since Saturday night. And I'm just not sure how much longer I have in this space, honestly.
There you go. You heard it at the end. I don't know how much longer I have in this space, and Frenzy kind of adding to this as well. Jon Anik expresses his frustration, even hints at retirement from UFC commentary. Fan reaction to him thinking du Plessis rightfully won. I also thought du Plessis won, and I've also been getting weird comments from people as well. Here's the thing. Like, I get people criticizing me, but you're going after Anik? Like, really? I mean, I understand, everyone's prone to criticism, but I'm sure people have been extra crappy to Anik just because of an opinion he had in a fight. So if you're one of those fans, this is what you're doing. You're basically getting one of the best voices in the sport expressing his frustration over just people being shitty. Like, don't do that. Like, there's nothing wrong with being critical, but going that extra step of getting a guy like Anik frustrated, who, let's be honest, he's been in the UFC since 2011 as far as commentary goes. He's not a guy that's really controversial or anything like that. So if he's expressing his frustration, there's some fans that have been extra shitty. But let's stick on the topic at hand, which is just that Anik might be leaving the UFC, and it's interesting that this comes up because if you follow me on Patreon or on the Discord chat, this is something I heard last week, is that Anik might be leaving the UFC here soon. Now, nothing's confirmed, but I have a source that is very much in the know that mentioned to me that Anik is sort of hinting that he's going to be leaving the UFC soon. So that's something to keep an eye on. Now, I also heard from another source that Anik renewed his contract recently. So, again, like, I think there's a bit of truth in between there. Maybe he signed the contract and maybe he's having second thoughts. Contracts, of course, can be broken, but it's certainly something to kind of keep an eye on here, as Anik, like I said, has been doing this for a long time. And I think people need to realize that, doing commentary and going to these events, and as someone who covers, I don't cover that many events. I cover maybe like 3-4 a year. It's hard on your family. And you think of Anik, every month he's leaving to go to different cities and doing commentary, and he is living the dream. And I'm not, gonna say poor Anik by any means, because again, it's a dream job for a lot of people. But if you've got a family and you're away, 1 week out of the month, it adds up, and it really takes a toll on personal lives. And I've even talked to some other media members who are on the regular grind that do go to all the pay-per-views and all the events, and it adds up. It really does cut into your personal life. So would not surprise me if Anik decides to step away. But again, I want to be clear here, nothing concrete. I just know that there is some talk about him potentially stepping away from the commentary booth. And, sort of leading further to this, you notice Anik now has been doing other stuff, right? We see here he's been doing NFL picks with his brother. He's got the partnership with DraftKings. You can see their channel is going quite well. You see the views are doing quite well. And he's been doing some interviews as well. I think he's sort of taking the lead of a lot of fighters right now, especially like Michael Bisping, who's really been putting time into their YouTube channel and turning that into a profitable, side hustle, so to speak. So Listen, if I'm Anik and you had the choice of, and I'm sure he's getting paid very well by the UFC, but you can still make a decent living just doing interviews and doing stuff on your YouTube channel. And he's got a big enough brand that he can do it. Plus you're getting the sponsorship here from DraftKings. Plus you're doing, other things like football, where I'm sure he's getting compensated for that too. Why would you want to deal with all the travel and the fans going back and forth, like he kind of mentioned there as well? So it's certainly something to keep an eye on. Again, I want to reiterate for the third time, nothing is set in stone, but I have heard from a good source that Anik is potentially leaving the UFC and that he's kind of getting to the point where, it's being too much and it's affecting other things. And, I'm sure the fans being extra crappy this week after UFC 297 is certainly not helping matters. But yeah, this could be a huge story, right? Because if Anik leaves, who goes in his place? Is it Brendan Fitzgerald? And again, Rogan's probably on the end of his UFC tenure as well. Rogan's been there the longest out of any commentary member. And then it would sort of be a shifting thing, you would think, right? If Fitzgerald steps in or they hire someone, like someone's going to get added to the commentary team if Anik leaves, right? So we can speculate a little bit on that in terms of, what would happen if Jon Anik left. But I'll say this right now, Anik's the best. I mean, him leaving would be very, very, very difficult for the commentary team going forward. As I just sneezed here. It'd be very kind of devastating, I think, to see him off the broadcast, because I really enjoy him. And not to mention, Anik's probably one of the nicest guys that I've ever met in this industry. Always makes time for me if I ever want an interview or anything. Great guy, just like I said, very level-headed. I think like even on social media, some of the stuff that he gets, he handles it pretty well, and it can be very annoying when you're, again, checking your mentions and people are saying all types of horrible stuff. But yeah, I think it's something worth keeping an eye on here. And again, there are some rumblings that Anik might be his UFC tenure as commentator might be coming to an end here. So we'll kind of keep an eye on that. But anyways, in the meantime, Anik has been absolutely killing it with all of his other content. And, I wish him well. And again, like I said, if you had the choice of what to do, would you rather do YouTube content and do all that and kind of not have to worry about the travel? Or would you rather do the UFC's job? Because again, like he really doesn't have anything else to prove. He's called some of the biggest fights. He's been in the promotion for, like I said, since 2011. And even before that, he worked for ESPN doing MMA coverage. He did commentary for Bellator. Like he's been in the game for a while. And let's say, he might not necessarily retire from commentary from the UFC. Maybe he could go commentate other promotions where it's not as demanding. Maybe he does like a couple one-offs or whatever. But Anik has built such a strong brand. And if you even look at his Twitter following here, he's one of the most prolific. Look at this, 356,000 followers here. He is one of the most known names in the UFC, and he's one of those guys that, again, in this day and age, if you have such a strong brand, you're going to be fine. Anik can do whatever he wants after this, and he's still going to make a good living, as far as I can tell, just based off how people are when they go on to other things. He's had the UFC's platform, like I said, since 2011. He's able to, use that, and people know who he is. I'm at events all the time and I see people come up to him and ask for pictures, and he's done a very good job connecting with the fans. And I think that's something that will serve him well, whatever he decides to do after this. So again, keep an eye on this. Jon Anik may be leaving the UFC. Again, who I heard this from is someone very much in the know. So that's something worth monitoring going forward. Could Jon Anik be leaving the booth? I think it's entirely possible. And again, you just add up what he said there. You add up the fact he's doing other stuff. You add up the fact that he's been doing this since 2011. It could all make sense. And I understand it. And again, you can't do commentary forever. Unlike other sports, there's no off season with the UFC, right? So it can be very demanding on a lot of media personalities and their families and everything else. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. A couple things. Number one, do you think there's any truth to this in terms of, Anik possibly leaving the UFC? Number two, who would replace him? Number three, who would they bring on the commentary team? Because whether they bump someone up or bring someone new in, who's available, who's out there? I'm trying to even think of like some of the names that could be available out there. I know I've heard some people mention, Mauro Ranallo, but I think my understanding is there's been sort of a bad blood between both parties, between Mauro and the UFC for quite some time. So I don't think you'll see him come over to the UFC. That's a story for another day. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see sort of what happens. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram @Lynch on Sports. I'm James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.